That?
Which war did you serve? In which war did you serve?
I served in World War II, from March of 43 until March of 46. Then I joined the Army, and in September of 46, and I got hurt in Europe. November of 51, spent 7 months at Valley Forge General Hospital. My rank was a first lieutenant. I had worked my way up from a sergeant up to a commission.
Okay. All right, so we have your branch of service, first Navy and then Army. And your highest rank was what? What was your highest rank?
First lieutenant.
First lieutenant. Now that was in the Army. What about in the Navy?
Navy, I was a water tender, third class, which is equivalent to a corporal.
Okay. And at what general locations did you serve when you were in the Navy?
Well, we started off in Norfolk, Virginia, went through the Panama Canal, and off of Guadalcanal, all the way up through to Okinawa. Every action, 13 different actions.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Okay.
I felt you should go in the service to help your country.
Where were you living at the time?
I was in Andover, Massachusetts.
Okay. Do you recall the date?
What?
Do you recall the date that you enlisted?
Yeah. I enlisted in March of 43.
Okay.
They took me in, swore me in, and shipped me to Sampson Naval Base for basic training. And from Sampson, I went to Fargo Building in Boston and waited for my ship, which was the Bunker Hill.
Okay. You said why you joined. Now, why did you pick the branch of service you joined? Why did you pick the Navy?
I didn't want to be walking in mud.
Okay. Tell me about your first days in the service when you were in basic training.
My first day?
In the service when you were in basic training. What was that like?
Well, the first day I was in the Navy, yeah. I was given watch duty from midnight until 4 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden, somebody tapped me on the shoulder. I was sound asleep on watch. And this lieutenant said, "Wake up, sailor." And I woke up. And he said, "How long you been in the Navy?" And I said, "All day." And he started to laugh. And then he said, "You got to stay awake when you're on watch." I said, "Okay." That was it. My first day in the Navy.
Okay. Were there any other boot camp or training experiences besides that as you went through boot camp?
Well, they had a couple of kids from the city, and it had snowed up at the lake. I forgot the name of the lake now, but I volunteered to shovel snow for these kids because I was used to shoveling snow. And the two kids that I shoveled snow for, they thought that was the greatest thing in the world because in the city they came from, nobody shoveled snow. It melted.
How did it feel when you were in the boot camp?
What?
Did you like being in boot camp? How did it feel?
Well,
or not so good?
I felt good, but I did not like the kids crying. You know how many kids got enlisted or they were in the service and they were away from home from the first time and they started to cry. And I couldn't understand that, why they were crying, but they were crying. So.
And how old were you when you went in?
17.
So were they
18,
young?
actually 18, 17 and a half.
Okay. So they were young like you?
Yeah, they were young kids.
Yeah.
They were crying. They were away from home and they were crying.
Do you remember any of your instructors at boot camp?
What?
Any of your instructors at boot camp? Do you remember any of them?
I don't remember any of the instructors.
You don't remember any of them? Okay. And how'd you get through it?
Fine.
Because there must have been a lot of marching and
Yeah,
everything.
I got through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
After boot camp, where did you go?
After boot camp, they sent me to the Fargo building in Boston to wait for my ship, the Bunker Hill.
The Bunker Hill. And what were your first impressions when you arrived there on the ship?
It was big. It was big.
And your assignment there was?
I was in a fire room.
Fire.
And they taught me how to take care of steam boilers. So I was a water tender, third class.
Okay. Where did you go from the port? Did you go right to sea?
No, we went on a cruise. We went to Norfolk and then San Juan on a shakedown cruise because the Bunker Hill was just commissioned.
Oh.
And we went back to Norfolk, and then they took us down through the Panama Canal up to San Diego. And in San Diego, I had a couple of adventures. Well, I sat between two movie stars on a stage.
Wow.
And was invited to Hollywood after the war. I never went. But,
you went to a show and you sat between two movie stars?
Yeah.
Do you remember who they were?
Yeah, Ingrid Bergman and Judy Garland.
Oh my gosh.
But they didn't know, they were just starting out.
Yeah.
I didn't know who they were.
Oh, you
They were movie stars. I found out later on in life who they were.
Okay.
And I think I'm almost sure it was Judy Garland.
Wow.
But anyway, I enjoyed the night.
Very nice.
They came down. They were not in the show. They were part of the show people from Hollywood that were there to dance with the GIs.
Oh, I see.
I danced with Patty Andrews.
Wow.
That's the Andrews sisters.
Yes.
I danced with Patty Andrews. So she was nice. She was a nice lady.
Wow.
I asked her if I could put my head on her shoulder.
You were very tall, though.
Yeah, but I put my head on her breast.
So you knew what you were doing. Describe a typical day for you in the service when you were on the battleship.
Typical day?
Yeah, typical day when you were on the ship.
You slept 4 hours. Like say it was you slept from 12 to 4 in the morning. That'd be 12 or 4 watch. You get up and you did the 4 to 8 watch. And then you go to breakfast when you get off the 8 o'clock shift. And then you had 8 to 12 to relax, do whatever you wanted to do, write letters or whatever. And then 12 to 4, you went back on duty. You had 4 on and 8 off, 4 on and 8 off. So, and I kind of wandered around ship. You know, the ship was so big. If you went to the fantail, it took you all day to walk down there. So, and the officers' quarters were up forward, and the enlisted men were back forward. And I'd go to the oil shack where the oil kings were, they pumping oil. I'd go and I'd just bullshit with them, just talk. And then they had the water kings that took care of water. You go down to their shack and you talk to those guys. And, you know, I had a lot of friends in the service. I could make a friend easy. Because right in here, I was here for 2 days and I know half the people already, you know. So I don't I don't mess around. You're going to mess around. You're going to mess around. But anyway, but on board ship, and I met this fellow, Georgie Thorne. He was from Waltham, Mass. And he and I could see eye to eye on a lot of things. So, and I was from Andover, Mass., and he was from Waltham. So, and his father owned a hunting lodge on China Lake in Maine, which I got a lot of invites to go up to China Lake. After the war, I spent a lot of time up in Maine with him. So, I didn't like to hunt. I hate guns. You want to hunt, I'll go along with you, but and after the war, I decided to buy a gas station, which went down the tubes. Then I talked to my father, and my father said, "What are you going to do?" And my father was a plant manager, and I could have gone to work for him. But I don't want to go to work. Pa, I don't want to. Well, will you drive me to work, and then you can use my car? Okay, I'll drive you to work. So I bought a car, and he liked it. So he said, "I'll swap you. You take my car, and I'll take yours." Okay, we'll swap my. So I used his Ford. So, but anyway.
So when you were on the ship, did you see any combat?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
And were other servicemen on the ship with you? Were they being attacked by the planes, the Japanese planes?
Yeah, I was on a carrier.
On a carrier, that's right.
And the carrier was attacked by Japanese kamikaze planes. And one of the Japanese suicide bombers dove into the island where on the carrier is on the right-hand side, starboard side, and the Japanese plane went right into the island, right, boom, it burst on flame, and of course it set the carrier on fire. So we had, in fact, I was in a number 3 fire room, and Anderson, the chief, sent me topside, check the hydraulics, make sure that the hydraulics weren't hurt. They didn't lock the hatches. The hatches to be locked with hydraulic system, and they wanted a hatch open so you could get the hell out. We were on the 7th deck down below. We had to come up 7 flights. So I went up and I took this fellow with me from the Bronx. I've forgotten his name now, and I showed him where these hydraulics were. So, and then I checked the hydraulics, and they were all right. And then I started to go to the machine shop, and I opened the hatch, and there was flames coming at me. I slammed the hatch, and I went back out, and I went topside. And when I went up topside, the chaplain was coming down, and we were being strafed. Japanese planes coming in, just across the ocean, and they boop, 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 and they were rattling bullets after us. So I was scared, but I didn't foul my pants or anything like that. I didn't. And the chaplain was nice. And this kid that landed on side of me, he asked me to give him part of the chaplain. So I crawled over the chaplain, and I lay down on this side of the chaplain. And then the Jap plane went. Then we saw that he got hit, and he went down on the other. He went into the water on the other side. And I got up. I remember walking across the hangar deck and looking at a 40 millimeter gun mount, and the kid that was firing that gun was a marble statue. He was melted all the way through. Never saw anything like it in my life, just like a statue. Chaplain said, "Don't touch him, because if you touch him, you break the skin and green stuff come out of him." So I said, "I won't touch him. I won't touch him." So he said, "He's gone. Don't worry about him." So then I went up to we had a movie star on board. His name is Wayne Morris. And Wayne Morris come down, and he was one of the flyers. He was a pilot. He never got his plane off the deck. So he didn't say anything to me, but I just kept talking to the chaplain, and the chaplain talked to me. And so they were reassuring me that everything was going to be all right, which it was. And we were hit at 10:15 in the morning, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the action was over, and we could start doing things. And that's when Carmichael busted into the food locker, and I went up topside, and they started to bring up bodies. And a canvas maker was sewing them in canvas bags, and they were burying them. They buried 900 that day.
900?
Yeah. 900 guys lost their lives. Well, I opened up a closet. Well, it's like a closet. I opened it up, and there was 2 guys in there dead. They were asphyxiated. The smoke killed them or whatever. They were in that closet. They went in there to hide, to get away from the ship was burning. So, oh well, I made it. That's what I say. I made it.
Were there any other times that you were attacked before then? Before that day?
We were attacked several times, but that was the worst one because the ship got hit. The ship got hit. So I'd seen Japanese planes come in and strafe us, but that's it. So off of Guadalcanal, we had about 6 Japanese planes come in, and they didn't last long because our air group knocked them down real fast. So, and I remember seeing one Japanese flyer as he went by the ship. I could see him, and he was bent over like that. So he was already dead before he hit the water. Yeah. And I'd seen our guys already dead when they hit the water. So war is, I call it hell. War is hell. And you never know what you're going to see. You never know what you're going to see. And when you don't, I don't remember too much about it because I wanted to forget. I wanted to forget it. I got home and my mother wanted to know what I had seen, and I said, "Ma, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it." Okay. So, and my father never asked me. My father was in World War I for 48 hours. He got kicked by a horse, and the horse broke his leg. And they sent him back to Boston, and then they sent him home. So my father never saw any service. They were marching him to Fort Devens, Mass., and the horse kicked him. So he broke his leg, and they sent him back to Boston, and then they sent him home. So he said, "I saw 48 hours."
It's okay, he still served.
Yeah. Did you ever keep your uniform, Pa? No, I burned it. I burned it.
Now, how did they put out, were you there when they were putting out the fire on deck?
Yeah, they put out the fire.
Okay.
We had good people. We had destroyer pulled alongside of us and pumped water onto us.
Okay.
And on both sides, port side and starboard side. And then an interesting thing, about 3 or 4 days later, they pulled the seagoing tugs up alongside of us, and they were going to drag us into Pearl Harbor. But instead, they dragged us into Seattle, Washington. It was shorter to go to Seattle than to go to Pearl Harbor. But anyway, I happened to be standing there, and one of the officers said to me, "Sailor," and I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Here, take this over to the tin can." I said, "How am I going to get over there?" He said, "Go down the ladder and go across they had a raft in between, it's a bumper raft, keeping the destroyer from hitting our ship. So I went down the ladder, probably about 6 flights, right down, hand over hand, and I got on the raft on hands and knees. I went over to the tin can, and I asked the officer when I handed him the envelope, I asked him if I could stay. Can I stay with you guys? No, you can't. You got to go back. So I had to go all the way back and up and I said to the lieutenant, I said, I delivered the message. He said, thanks a lot, sailor. That's all, because everybody was walking around. That's all.
And they were,
That's it.
crazy.
They expected you to do it. Your duty, you got to do it. So you did it.
Were you afraid, though, going down and across the raft?
I was scared to death that I would slip or fall off. So, and you're out in the Pacific, and the ships are going like this. Oh, I've had my time.
Did you ever get seasick when you were at sea?
Never got seasick.
No. It was so big, maybe you didn't feel it.
Well, even when I used to go fishing with my father off of Plum Island, never got seasick. My uncles would get seasick, and my cousins would get sick, not me. I'd say to my father, what the hell's wrong? Why are they hanging over the side? He said, they're throwing up. He and I would be all right.
So after that kamikaze hit, you needed to make it back to a safe harbor, either Pearl Harbor, and that's when we went to
we came in. No, we came to Seattle, Washington.
Yeah. Were you able to get there under your own power?
No, the Seagull and tugs took us in.
You didn't have enough power to get there. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
They had power, but that's enough to keep the ship operating, but not to get those big screws going. So.
Okay. So you weren't a prisoner of war. And you're not aware of being awarded any medals or citations? You never received any medals or citations?
No, I never received anything.
Okay.
And I got to tell you a funny thing. They asked about a month later, we were on our way in, they asked anybody that had did anything heroic to write it down and give it to an officer. I never wrote anything down. I opened hatches. I let people. I didn't want no part of it.
You did your duty.
I was getting paid. That's it. So anyway, that's the way it is. I have some good memories and some bad memories.
Yes.
That one memory of seeing that guy all melted down. Wow. That's what happens when you burn up. You melt.
Really? Had he been hit, or was it because he was holding on to
the heat got him. Yeah. My battle station was a 40 millimeter gun mount.
Oh, so you all had battle stations, no matter what okay.
Yeah. But when the ships hit, I was on duty in the fire room.
Okay.
So I never did get up to my battle station.
I see.
So, and the only time I got topside was when Anderson sent me up to check the hydraulics.
Okay.
And I checked the hydraulics. Then this kid from the Bronx was with me. I lost him. I don't know where he disappeared to. And I found out later on he died, but he walked into some situation he wasn't supposed to. So, but anyway, I felt I was extra careful on everything I did. Extra careful. Like, when I finally got back into the fire room, Anderson sent me up this one ladder up to the third deck. And when you get up to the third deck, you had to open a hatch. And I started to open a hatch, and water came down. So I dropped the hatch. I didn't know what the hell was up there. So I came back down in the fire room. And I told Anderson, I'm not going up there. You can drown. There's water coming in. He said, there isn't that much water. He says, you can go up. I said, screw you. You go.
You go look.
So I never did go up that ladder.
Did you ever figure out the source of the water?
No, I never did.
No,
I went up to the machine shop, and I found those two guys in a closet, and I turned them in, so they went down and got those two guys, and But if there was water on that deck, the water had dissipated. It was gone. So,
It's gone by then.
yeah. But the tin can, the destroyers were pumping water on us like crazy. But they put the fires out, and they pulled the seagoing tugs up, tied us to it. And I asked Commander Carmichael, where are we going? He said, Pearl Harbor. Well, it turned out we weren't going to Pearl Harbor. We were going back to Seattle, Washington.
How long did it take you to get there if you needed to be pulled?
Oh, we were a good week. A good week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you still continue your duties?
Yeah.
On the way back?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you kept the firearms going. Okay. But how do I put it? They weren't worried about the screws turning. They were being towed in, so. And you were all one. In other words, an officer was an enlisted man, and an enlisted man was an officer. You were all one. You were all just saving your fannies. That's all you were doing. So. And when we got into Seattle, we got Liberty, and I got a train, and I went all the way to Chicago, all the way to Andover, Massachusetts. Georgie Thorne and I got into Massachusetts, and thank the Lord we're home.
So you could leave when you were discharged after?
Yeah, well, they kept me for an extra 6 months because I knew certain functions on the ship. So,
okay.
So they kept me, they told me I was essential. You're essential. So they kept me from September until March. I didn't bother. Didn't bother me. I had good duty in Seattle, Washington. Every night I was up there at the dance hall, and I was going with a girl called Felba Herring.
Felba?
Felba Herring. Her father was the city editor for the Kansas City Star.
Wow.
And she was married, but she never told me. She wanted me to stop in Kansas City and get a job with her father. I never did. I wrote to my mother and I said, I'm going to stop in Kansas, but I never did. When I got discharged, I went right to Boston and got my discharge papers and I went home. Oh. But Felba Herring, she was a nice lady, but she was married all the time. She never told me she was married. She was a wave. She was in the Navy. She was a wave. So there was an island, and I forget the name of the island. They had the battalion of waves there. They did all clerical work for the Navy, I guess. So, and I'd been over that island a couple of times, and she invited me up to her quarters a couple of times. And no, I don't want to get caught in here. If we get caught, you get court-martialed. I don't want to be up there. So, but she was a nice lady, but she liked to dance. I met her at the dance. She liked to dance. She up at the dance hall. What?
Were they trying to repair your ship at all?
Huh?
Were they trying to repair your ship at all? Or was it?
They repaired it, and now it's been dismantled and taken apart, and the metal all sold. Okay. They dragged it down to San Diego in good repair, and they had a couple of Navy reunions that I went to in San Diego, and I was talking to one of the guys, and he said, you know, they're going to rip this apart. I said, what do you mean rip? He said, they're bringing in a bunch of welders. They're going to rip this ship. I said, no, they're not going to take the ship apart. Yeah, they are. A year later, the ship is all gone.
And yes, because didn't you say that you had a shakedown because it had just been, you had a shakedown at some point before you went overseas? Yeah,
a shakedown cruise is a brand new ship, and they have to check all of the factions in that ship. So they took us to Norfolk, Virginia, then to Haiti, check how the boilers work, how this work, how that. And then when we got back into Norfolk, the ship is certified, and they sent us down to the Panama Canal, up to San Diego. We went over to went to San Diego to pick up our air group.
Right.
We picked up 2 air groups, a fighter group and a bomber group. And then we went to Honolulu. We picked up our ammunition there, got all the ammo, and then we went out to Guadalcanal. And we messed around at Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands, all around in there for a while. And the next thing you know, we were at Truck Island. They were bombing Truck, and then they were bombing a couple other islands. Our air groups were doing that. And then we went into the Philippines, and we went to Okinawa. We went back to Seattle. Then we went back out to the Philippines and picked up troops.
Oh.
And we brought troops in to San Francisco. They put big 4-high bunks on the ship, and they brought the troops back. And then after that, in fact, I was discharged from there. We went up to Seattle, Washington, Pier 91, and I was discharged. I went home. Then they took the ship down to San Diego. They decommissioned us.
So the ship was really only a couple of years old.
Yeah.
Brand new, and then they took it apart.
They ripped it apart.
Wow.
That's not the only. They ripped up half the Navy apart.
Yeah. So were the flyers, were they Navy?
Navy pilots.
They were Navy pilots.
Navy pilots. Yep.
Okay.
They were a good group of people.
Yeah.
Good. Wayne Morris was a pilot. He was a nice guy. The only thing wrong with him is he'd wait for a movie night and then he'd walk down the aisle all alone, like swagger. He was a movie star going down the aisle. But he was a nice guy.
Yeah.
So I find everybody is nice. You're nice.
You were all working together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're nice. What do you got to be mad about?
That's right.
You get a bad job, you got a bad job. So you do it and you...
Do it and move on.
How many times do they... You got to crawl inside of that boiler. You got to scrape down all the... So you went through a little opening like this and crawled in. They'd hand you the tools and the light. You hang the light up and you start to scrape. 8 hours, and come back down. And the old chief would say, "How's it coming in there?" "It's coming fine." You take your tool, you bang on the pipe. He thinks you're working. Bang, 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 bang.
You got to figure it out.
But they had what they call mess duty. You know, you work in the mess hall. And the first time I worked in the mess hall, the old chief running the mess, he said, "You look like a good dishwasher, so you run the sinks." So I washed trays. They had trays. I washed trays. And then I did that for about a month. And he says, "Okay, Pete, I'm going to put you up on the garbage detail." "What's that?" "Well, all the garbage from the galley goes up into that room, and you don't dump that garbage until the skipper tells you to. Because we're in a war zone, and they don't want the garbage for the Japs to find out." So I'd be up there, and I'd be sitting on a hatch cover reading a book. And they'd bring up garbage cans, about probably 20 garbage cans, line them all up. Then this officer would come in and say, "Well, 15 minutes you can start dumping the garbage. 15 minutes. Got a watch on you?" "Yes, sir." "Well, 15 minutes. No sooner, no later. 15 minutes, start dumping that garbage." He says, "Because we're in a certain area out here in the Pacific, and the captain's wants to move to another area. So we're going to dump the garbage here, and then we'll get the hell out of here before the Japs come up." So, okay. So I'd open up a hatch outside, and I had a little chute, and I'd dump and go out and I'd put the garbage. Then I'd rinse the garbage cans out, and I'd dump what I rinsed out. Okay. Then I'd stack the garbage cans up, and then guys in the galley would come up and get their cans. they had their numbers on all the cans, or they knew the cans that belonged to them. So, you know. But I'd sit there, and after I got through, I'd do that for about 8 minutes. It'd take me about 8 minutes to dump it all the cavity.
All of it? I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wouldn't take long. But then I'd get down and I'd get in the chow line, and I'd see the old Anderson, Chief Anderson. He said, "What do they got you doing up there in the galley?" I said, "I'm emptying garbage." "That's a good job for you." So.
They have a sense of humor, right? Okay. Now, tell me about it. The next question is, did you sustain any injuries? So if you would tell me about what happened when you were in the Army.
In the Army, I had a tank run over me.
Okay. And was it one of ours?
One of ours.
Okay.
It put me in a hospital for 7 months. Busted me up on the left side and killed my driver. Tommy, poor Tommy. I reached for him and he was gone. And I had my helmet crushed on me, and I couldn't get my head out from the helmet. And I had a colored sergeant, Sergeant Farmer. He was trying to get me out from under that Jeep. And he said, "For Christ's sake, get you." I said, "I can't get out, Sarge, I can't get out." I reach in and something greasy here, and it was Tommy's blood. I was putting blood all over me. And finally, I yanked my head, and I kicked my legs, and the sergeant dragged my fanny out, took me into the woods. That's when I asked him for my .38. I was hurting so bad, I wanted to kill myself.
Oh, God. Maybe that's good that you didn't have it.
Well, he said, "There's no gun. There's no gun, Sarge. There's no gun, Lieutenant. No gun." I said, "I had a gun here. There's no gun." I know that gun wound up in a black market someplace.
But he probably saw that you were so badly injured and was afraid what you'd do.
He saved my fanny because he just wouldn't give it to me.
Right.
Because he knew what I wanted to do with it.
Yeah. He didn't let you.
I wanted to put a bullet right here and kill myself. So.
I know.
But
must have been awful.
But they put me on a Jeep, and Jeep took me into Munich, Germany. And while I'm on the Jeep, the medic that put me on the stretcher, he gave me a shot of something. I don't know what it was, but it made me throw up. So I kept telling him, I said, "I'm going to throw. I got to." And he said, "It's the medication I gave you causing it, but you'll be all right. Lieutenant, you'll be all right." He said, "We're taking you to the hospital." I said, "Good. Whereabouts is the hospital, for Christ's sake, Well, the hospital is 30 miles away. Well, get me to Munich, Germany." So they got me into Munich, put me in, and the nun says, "You're dirtying my deck."
That was obnoxious.
But I never got into a bed in that Munich hospital, because they sent an Army ambulance for me and took me to an Army hospital in Munich, Germany. And I stayed there for 24 hours. Then they took me to Heidelberg. From Heidelberg, they took me to Frankfurt. And from Frankfurt, the colonel from Chicago flew in. And he got into Frankfurt, and he came right in, and he looked me over. And he cut all the casts that I had. They had put casts on me. He cut them all off on my arm and everything. And then he strung me up on overhead. "No, don't let anybody put any casts on you." Okay. And they didn't. They strung me up. But anyway, I got back, and I got into Valley Forge. And you'll appreciate this story. The blonde nurse at Valley Forge came into my room. I had the private room. I was beat up so much, they had me in a private room. And she came in and she stood next to my bed. And like if I was laying here, the edge of the bed here, I had my arm down, and I said, "Is that you I'm touching?" She said, "Yeah, that's all right. Don't worry about it." So I said, "Do you mind if I run my hand up your leg?" She says, "Well," she says, "I would mind it, but if you have to do it, do it." So I ran my hand up the back of her leg, just up this part here, not all the way up to the crotch. Just I said, "That feels pretty nice." She says, "Well," she says, "I'll put your name down for a picnic." I said to her, "Picnic?" She says, "Yeah." She says, "Every Saturday they take anybody that's hurt, they put them, and they take them up to one of the parks, and they have a picnic." I said, "Well, that's nice." So they took me to my first picnic, and I was laying on a blanket, and I had foam rubber things under my legs and up in here. And she came over and she sat down next to me. She said, "Can I get you something?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Take your clothes off so I can see what the hell you look like." So she started to laugh like hell. So we became very good friends. She was a nice nurse.
Nice nurse.
Yeah.
Good sense of humor.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any internal injuries when you were hurt?
Just broken bones.
Not just.
119 places.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Cracks and breaks. My hands are all broken up. My hands were like this. The German doctor had shaved my arm, shaved all of the muscle that came out of my arm. She shaved it all off.
Wow.
The Army doctors gave me hell for letting him do that. I said, I couldn't stop. I was hurting. He was going to straighten me out. I had a field jacket on that was buttoned up in here. And when they unbuttoned that, there was all nothing but blood and red stuff. And I was conscious all the time. I never passed out. And that the doctors couldn't understand why I said, I wanted to see what the hell was happening to me. Just, well, here you're hurting, you're screaming. Every time we moved you, you'd scream like hell. And then you'd shut up, you cry, kill me, get rid of me. I'm no good to anybody anymore. And my doctor said, "You're okay." I said, "I'll never have any kids." He said, "They didn't run over that part of you, Lieutenant." I said, "Oh, okay."
I guess I'll live. Wow.
So then I had my wife over there with me, and when the division went over in the fall, and I went and I brought my wife over into Europe, my wife and my 2 kids. And I had German quarters. I had a German maid. $21 a month I paid her. Yeah, Hilda, never forget her. She was a good cook. Her husband was a prisoner of war in a Russian prisoner of war camp. And I met him when they turned him loose. They turned him loose. And I got their picture in my collection someplace, their picture. So she was this German, not the German cook, my German secretary's husband was in the prisoner of war camp. And she was my secretary. But the Hansi was married to Hilda, and she was a good cook, and she was a housekeeper and a cook. And my wife enjoyed it. My wife would be out with the kids walking around. But when we came back to the States, Hilda wanted to come back with us, but I couldn't get permission they wouldn't let her come over. So, and my secretary, I forgot her name now. I got it on the back of the picture, I got it, but I forgot. But her husband was a prisoner of war with the Russians. And 7 years he put a POW with the Russians. And when he came back, finally, I was invited to dinner at her house, and he came walking in, and he shook hands with me. He was a nice guy. And he said to me in broken German, he said, I'm going to try to get to the United States. Philadelphia. That's all he remembered, Philadelphia. If I can get to Philadelphia. He never made it. Never made it. So. But I said, how could you put up with 7 years of that? He said, you put up with it. You put up with it. He says, they work you. He says, they work you 24 hours a day. When they had a project, they work you. As the Russians do that to you. He says, the Russians, the Polish, they all, if you're in their hands, they work you. He said, I had a Polish boss from Poland. The Russians conscript, they take people out of Europe, bring them up. Awful, awful. War is awful.
Yes.
And there's no, how do you put it? No, I'm not going to use the term excuses. There's no excuses for war, but there's nothing anybody can do about it. This is all politics.
Right.
Politics. The people up above, they don't see eye to eye, so they want to go kick this mule in the ass. That's what they'll do.
Yep.
So
they should have to fight, and then maybe we wouldn't have.
Roosevelt and Churchill, we're going to straighten this country out, and they start a war. They don't care.
Yeah.
Now, when the Japanese came into Pearl Harbor, that was a perfect excuse. Perfect excuse. But anyway.
Anyway.
I'm talking too much now.
No, you're not. This is perfect. I love it. How did you stay in touch with your family when you were in the Navy?
How?
How did you stay in touch with your family? In the
Write
Navy,
letters.
you weren't married.
Write letters.
Write letters, yeah.
Write letters.
How was the food?
Food in the Navy?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good food in the Navy.
What about
Army?
Not so good. Did you have enough supplies?
Enough what?
Enough supplies when you were in the Navy?
Yeah, we had plenty. Yeah.
And then what about the Army?
The Army?
Did you feel like you had enough?
Well, I was a mess officer, and I always managed to make sure that my boys had something to eat. I got to tell you a story. In Fort Hood, Texas, I had a mess sergeant, and one day he came to me and he said to me, Lieutenant, he says, can I take tomorrow off? I said, sure, go ahead, take it off. You know, make sure that the meals are going to be all right, but you can take it. Oh, he said, well, I need a Jeep. I said, oh, he said, I got to go to Waco, Texas from Fort Hood. I said, okay, get a Jeep out of the motor pool, go ahead. The next night, 7 o'clock at night, Major Woods, he was our adjutant, he called me. He says, you lost a mess sergeant. I said, what happened? He says, he's dead. He was in a Jeep accident. I said, oh. I said, how's his wife? He said, he had his girlfriend with him, God damn it. I said, his girlfriend? He said, yeah, he picked up his girlfriend yesterday morning. You gave him a Jeep, and he took off with a Jeep, and he's going over a rise on the way to Waco. And he got hit head-on with a truck. Both of them are dead. I said, oh, my God. I said, does his wife know? He says, yeah, I got the job of going to tell her. I said, oh, my God. I said, do you want me to go do it? He said, no. He says, I'll do it. I'll do it. I said, well, do you give me their address? You know, Killeen, Texas. I'll give you the address, but stay away from her. That's all he did, stay away from her. Okay, so I never did get to see her. But he killed himself, or he was killed.
He was killed, but bad decision.
He made a wrong move when he asked his girlfriend to go to Waco, Texas. He wanted to get out of town, so he got out of town all right.
Yeah.
No.
Forever.
Yep.
Oh.
But anyway, these things happen to you in the world.
Yeah, whether in the service or not. Did you feel any pressure or stress when you were in the Navy?
Not me.
No?
I let things ride.
Yeah. Good for you. Was there anything special you had for good luck? A good luck charm?
No, I never did have anything special.
No?
No. I don't recall ever having anything special. The only thing is I had my belt buckle. The guy did my belt buckle. And after I got out of the service, the belt went south. I don't know where it went. Like all my clothes, my mother gave it away. I got dungarees. I had about 6 pair of dungarees. My mother gave them all away. She said, "You're not going to wear dungarees." But any job I had, I always wore a business suit. As a salesman, as a manager, I always wore a suit. I had, I think, about 6 or 8 suits that I'd alternate. And in fact, I got a suit coat at home, in my daughter's closet now, and I got an Army uniform in there. Yeah. But by and large, when I got out of the service, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. You know, you're home. My mother kept saying, "Go back to school," because I had left school. "Go back to school." I'm not going to go back to school, Ma. You know, I'm too old for that. So. Just got out of college, just finishing college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're having a party for her on the 17th of May. In fact, I got a bag in there full of stuff I've been buying to give her. So, but anyway.
So you had the equivalent of 2 years of college with OCS?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were in the Army.
Yeah, they asked me in OCS to select a college. If you were going to go to college, Lieutenant Basin would say to me, "If you're going to go to college, Pete, which one would you go?" I said, "I don't know what the hell college to go to." He said, "Well, select a college." I said, "Penn State." He said, "That's a good school." But I'll tell you a story about OCS. You put in 6 months training to become an officer. Mm-hmm. And it's tough training. They give you rough training. So I was having trouble with one of my classes. They call it gunnery mathematics. I was having super trouble. So I went to Lieutenant Basin, my immediate
superior?
No, he was a platoon leader. Oh. He was a superior. He was in charge of our platoon. So I went to him, and Lieutenant Basin, I said, "I got trouble with gunnery mathematics." I said, "I don't understand it. I don't follow it." I said, "I had trouble in high school with math, and now I got a worse math now." He says, "Well," he said, "sit tight on it a couple of days." So one noontime, he came in the mess hall. He tapped me on the shoulder. He said, "Come on." I went with him. Took me into my barracks. Got my books that I was working on. Got my books. He said, "Come on," took me out, put me in his car. Took me to his quarters. His wife made a pot of coffee. He sat me at his kitchen table, and he worked with me until I could pass all the mathematical tests. 2 hours he worked with me. He said, "I think you'll pass the test now, Pete." That's the way I graduated from OCS, because I went and got help. And I wasn't afraid to go and get help. And Basin, when I got my bars, he came over and shook hands.
It's really special.
One of my adventures in OCS.
A good adventure. A good adventure. Did you ever, how did people entertain themselves on the ship? When you
Movies.
Movies?
They had movies.
Yeah.
They'd have movies in the hangar deck.
Did you ever, were there entertainers? Did you ever see any of the OCS shows?
No, I had an occasion when I was a little kid. I had a cousin, Francis Richards. He was a tap dancer, and he taught me how to tap dance. So I tap danced in several vaudeville shows. So when I went in the Navy, there was a little colored kid who was a tap dancer, and they put on a show on the ship, and they asked for talent. So I said, I tap dance. So they put me up on the stage with this colored kid, and I would do a routine, and he would do a routine.
Oh, great.
And I would do a routine, and he would do a routine. And there'd be 500 troops out there all watching, you know. But you don't pay attention to it. I just went and did my stuff. Oh. But when I got home, I told my mother, I said, I danced for the troops. She said, well, she said, why don't you go to Boston and see if there's any shows that could use a dancer. I said, I don't want to dance for a living. So, well, you're a good tap dancer, you should go. So I said, all right. So I got halfway to Boston. I said, I'm not going. I went back home. So I went to work for a riding academy for 2 weeks, taking care of horses. And then my gas station went down the tubes. So I said to my father, I'm going back in the service. So I went in the Army. I was going to go in the Navy, but they didn't want to give me my rate back, so I went in the Army.
Yeah, I don't understand why they wouldn't give you your rate back. You weren't out that long. Oh, well.
I understood that the service wanted servicemen, but they wanted to bring them in their way.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay. Oh, well.
so I got my commission, went to Fort Benning, then to Fort Hood, then to Fort Jay. I went all over the place.
And then you got sent to Germany.
What?
Then you got sent to Germany?
I went over, the 2nd Armored Division went to Europe, and I was part of the 12th Armored Infantry Battalion. And I went with them. We went out of Galveston, Texas, and got into Germany, and I became a half-ass company commander. And they sent me up to the Russian front to umpire a problem, and that's when the tank came around the bend and got me. So, put me in the hospital, but I had a good good orthopedic man. He put me together.
So was this during the Korean War?
During the Korean War.
The Korean War. Okay.
Yeah, the old colonel, he kept me and McKechnie out from going to the war.
Okay.
He said, you were in the Pacific and your ship got hit. You saw action, so I'm keeping you here.
Okay.
McKechnie saw action in France, so I'm keeping him here. But the rest of you junior officers, they were graduates from West Point or whatever, you're all going to Korea. So they all went. And because there was shortage of officers, they made me a company commander, so, which is all right.
That's okay.
So,
We're a good company.
and then the 2nd Armored Division was sent to Europe to replace one of the divisions that was coming back.
Okay.
So we went over there, and in fact, General Palmer, they put my My battalion, they stationed in Worms, Germany, which is right outside of Heidelberg,
Okay.
and a few miles from Frankfurt, Germany. So,
It's a pretty countryside.
so I had a good time in Europe. In fact, I got quarters, and I brought my wife over and the kids, and then I brought them over in February of '51, and I got the tank ran over me in October of '52. So she was there for almost 9-10 months. So that's all right. They're just talking to each other.
You're trying to keep up with it. What about going on leave?
What's that?
Going on leave? Did you go on leave in the Navy? Or
No.
because you were in a war, you didn't get to go on?
In the Navy, when the ship got hit, they let us go home.
Okay, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
As far as leave.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall any other humorous or particular events?
Particular event?
Anything that was humorous? Any other stories you haven't told us yet?
I can tell you a story that
Like the nurse?
not about the service, about my uncle.
Oh,
My uncle Albie, he lives in Cape Nettic, Maine. Of course, he's gone now. When he was 103, my wife and I went to visit them up in Cape Nettic, Maine. I was in the Army, and my mother had often said, you know, you ought to go up and visit your uncle. He's getting old. So my Aunt Judith was alive, and my cousin Rose was alive. So they're all gone now, but my wife and I drove up to Cape Nettic, Maine, which is right outside of Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
oh, that's pretty.
So as we drove up into their driveway was like, oh, I'd say from here to the road long, up the driveway. And as we turned off the Route 1 to go onto his driveway, my wife said, there's fire trucks up in there. I said, oh Christ, the barn's on fire, the farmhouse on fire. So I continued on up. There was one fire truck up there, and no fires, no smoke. And I got out of the car, and my Aunt Judith came out of the kitchen door, and I said, where's the uncle? Where's Uncle? She said, the damn fool is up on the barn roof. And I looked, there he was, he was sitting on the barn roof, and the fire department are getting ladders up to go up and get him.
How'd he get up there?
He took a ladder and he went up to fix the barn roof. There was a leak in the barn roof, and he took a hammer and some nails and a couple of wooden shingles, and he got up the. Now he was only about this big, little guy, Uncle Albie. So there was 3 or 4 firemen around the fire truck. They were laughing. I said, how the hell did he get up there? He says he climbed up the ladder, but he's afraid to come down. He's afraid to come down, so we're going to get him down.
Called the fire department.
So they finally got him down, and I said to him, Uncle, I said, you're a damn fool. He says, you don't have to tell me, I know that.
I know now.
Well, he fell out of bed, he hit his head on the bureau and killed himself when he was 103 years
Oh
old.
my God.
Yeah, Uncle Albie. But that was a funny story, because we pulled into the driveway, fire trucks on there, oh my God, it's burning.
On fire.
It's Uncle Albie's up on the barn roof. I told my mother and my father that story, and my father said, oh, you should have left him there.
Not his brother. What did you think of the officers and your fellow servicemen?
What's that?
What did you think of the officers and your fellow servicemen?
They were all good except one. There was one, his name was McDonald. He was a Major McDonald. And I used to say to a couple of guys that I'd be with, somebody ought to talk to the Major. He didn't know how to dress. He'd leave his ties open, shirt sleeves rolled up. He's an officer in the Army. He should dress properly. He doesn't know how to dress. That was the only man I wish that he'd gone home.
He wasn't.
He was bad commander. He dressed poorly. He did everything bad. I'll bet when he sat in the officer's quarters to eat, he probably ate bad too.
Yeah, bad manners.
Yeah.
Did you keep a journal when you were in the service? Either
No.
Navy or... Okay.
No, that thing that you're reading there, about 5 years ago, I was sitting at home, and I said, I better write something up so the kids would know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
So I started to write, and the more I wrote, the more came out of me. And there's a lot there.
There is a lot there. Yeah, I enjoyed.
Yeah. So,
That was good.
and my wife died in '05, so she never knew I wrote that up. But Jeannie was a good woman. 57 years. She's a good woman.
I love your memories of her. It was very sweet.
Well, she worked in the school system as a cook, and in elementary schools, and she did that for 17 years.
Wow.
And when she left, I get half her pension. I get half her pension from the state of Connecticut. So
Good.
I get $175 a month from her.
She's still taking care of you.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about when your service ended, and so were you officially discharged out of the Army?
I'm not discharged out of the Army. I'm retired from the Army.
Retired. Okay.
I'm retired with a 50% disability.
Okay.
I'm a company commander on paper in the state of Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
That's gone by the board. I'm sure that they've taken my name off the papers and off the record, because I'm going to be 90 years old. They don't want no 90-year-old commander up there.
But you never received anything official?
No, nothing official. But I get stuff from the service all the time, you know.
So they still know where you are?
Yeah, they know where I am.
Keep in touch.
And I get my pension check from the Army, goes to my bank in Riverside, TD Bank in Florida. I have it go to Florida because I moved to Florida in '97, and I had my Social Security check and my Army pension go to Florida. So the TD Bank that I do business with down here, they want me to transfer everything up. Leave it alone, you know. My daughter takes care of my finances. I don't have no money. I got a few $1,000s in the bank and the checkbook, and that's about it. I don't need no money.
You're taking care of here?
All my kids are taken care of. My son don't want no part of the estate. I told my daughter, Penny, she takes care of it, to sell my car, put the money in the bank. I don't want to have any real property around. So that's it.
Did you make any close friendships in the service?
Any what?
Any close friendships that you still have?
Well, they're all gone now. They're dead.
They're all dead.
Georgie Thorne died 18 years ago. So, and he was probably my best friend. He was in Waltham, Mass. And I got a fellow named Bud Woods. He lives in Anderson, Indiana. And I met him in Florida, but he was never in the service with me, but he became a very good friend of mine. And I talk to him once in a while. Joe Falco down in Bridgeport, he was a customer. I still talk to him. Tom Garrity's out in California. I talk to him once in a while. But in the service, I didn't have anybody in the service except Georgie Thorne, and he died. So I didn't have anybody in the service that I knew. So.
Okay. What did you go on as a career after your service?
What's that, ma'am?
The career after your service.
Afterwards?
Yeah. First you had the gap.
Oh, when I got out of the hospital, after the tank ran over me, and I spent 7 months in the hospital.
Right.
I got out of the hospital, and I met a gentleman who sold me his car, a 1949 Chevrolet four-door sedan. And he became like I knew him to play golf with and stuff, and he'd come over to the house a couple of times, but nobody to be attached to. So, but my wife asked me what I was going to do, and my next door neighbor in North Babylon, Long Island, where I live, he was a sales manager for Remington Rand, and he told me that they needed an office manager in the Hempstead, Long Island office. And I said, who do I see to get the job? He says, me. I said, okay. He said, you start Monday. I said, okay. So I went to work for Remington Rand. And George Wolf is his name, George Wolf. So I had an office staff of 4 girls and a shaver division and a adding machine division. And I had 2 salesmen out, and a shaver division, the guy took care of electric shavers. And I did that, oh hell, 1, 2, 3, about 3 years. And then I didn't do anything, and then I took a couple of months to leave, just didn't do anything. And I was in that coffee shop, and I met my new boss, Herm Palmer, but I didn't know he was going to be my boss. And he gave me a job running his accounts receivable department. And Evelyn taught me how to do that. I did that for a few years, and I made a living for my family. That's what I'm doing, making a living. So I played a lot of golf. I met a guy named Bill Turk, who was a assistant manager of Chase National Bank, and he and I played golf on Sundays, and he lived about 8, 9 houses from me. I bought a house in a development. There was so many houses. So, and I had another friend, his name was Burke, and he owned a business. What the hell did he do? Did plaster work. He did plaster work. Oh, in fact, he did my house. He came in and did my house. That's how I met him. But I played a lot of golf, and I'd say to my wife on a Friday night, let's take a ride to Maine. Okay. She'd pack a little bag. What are we going to do with the kids? Take them over to your sister's house. Go to the kids. Janet, she was the oldest girl. Janet, you want to go to see Aunt Gladys? Oh, yeah, can we go? Can we go? Take the kids over and drop them off. And we go to Maine or we go someplace. I'd say, let's go upstate New York. Take a ride. We never ate in the same restaurant every Friday night. It was a different restaurant. We have a habit in Connecticut. We'd go to Danbury to dinner. We'd go to New Haven to dinner. We'd go to Groton to dinner. Every Friday night we'd go to a different restaurant. It was a thing we did. And we liked living. We lived. And I didn't complain. My wife never complained. She lived with her mother and father in the Bronx, New York. She had a sister, Gladys. I dated Gladys before. Gladys married a kid from Missouri. He died, Johnny Lemon. He was from Missouri. You had to show him the way. But anyway, Gladys now lives in Denver, North Carolina. There's a Denver in North Carolina. She lived down there now.
Oh, okay.
She's with her daughter. Her daughter's got a house down there. Oh.
How did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the military in general?
I didn't want to never go back to the military. When I retired from the Army, I was hurt, and I'd lay in bed saying, I never want to go back.
Have you joined any veterans organizations?
No, I joined the VFW. I joined in Berlin, Connecticut, which I'm not active, but I became a lifetime member, and that was it.
Have you ever gone back to reunions? Either Navy
I've gone to Army reunions. My classmates were next reunions in November, and it's going to be at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I'm sure that's where they're going to have it. So, and I'll go to those things because my wife and I like to go. We went to Washington D.C. We've been out to Vegas. We've been out to San Diego. We'd like to go to these things. So. And I've got friends. I can call them right now, you know, and talk to them. So.
Good. That's good you kept that. How did the service and the experiences affect your life?
Affect my life? Yeah. I would say that I decided that I was going to take it easy. I wasn't going to take anything hard. If it was going to be hard, I didn't want it. I don't want no part of it. If I look for the easy way out, if I was going to go to Chicago and I had a choice between a train or a plane, I'd fly out. And if I was going to go downtown here now, I'd call a taxi. I know I could go out and thumb a ride, but I'd call a taxi. If I could afford it, I would do it. The whole thing was finances, if you got the money. When I was married for 57 years, my wife had a habit. She had a jar on the kitchen table, and in that jar was $5 bill, $10 bill, $20 in that jar. And if I was going out with the boys that night, I'd go to the jar and I'd take out what I needed. If she was going with the girls, she'd take. But you never went to that jar to buy anything. If I wanted to buy a shirt no, take that out of my pocket. I'd go to the jar was strictly for fun. It's fun. It's a fun jar.
That's a great idea.
And she always kept $100 in there. She was a character. She was a nice person. Nice person.
You had fun.
Well, you know, I got to tell you this funny story. We get ready to go to bed. She said, "You going to mess with me tonight?" I said, "No, I wasn't planning on it." Well, she says, "You better stop messing because I need it."
What a sweetheart. I don't know if we can keep that on the tape. Is there anything else you'd like to add about your service?
My service?
Anything else you'd like to add to the end?
Well, I was a disciplinarian, strictly a disciplinarian. I walked into a gin mill one night in North Babylon, Long Island, and I sat down at the table with my wife, and while I'm sitting there having a beer, the soldier walked in, out of uniform. He was out of uniform, but he had half his uniform on. So I got up out front and I walked over to him, and I said, "Son," I said, "get the hell out of here and get your full uniform on, or go right home and tell your father you're a bad soldier." He said, "What am I doing wrong?" I said, "You're half dressed. Where's the rest of your uniform?" "Oh, I thought if I'm a civilian I could use." I said, "No, you come in as a soldier, you go out as a soldier. So get out of here." So he turned around and he walked out. My wife gave me hell. She says, "You're not in the service now, Cliff. You're home on leave. Leave the man alone." I said, "Oh, I thought I was straightening him out." She said, "Well, that's the way I was. If I saw something wrong, I straightened it out. That was it." So.
And that's the way you felt the respect
Yeah.
for the service.
Hey, I felt I worked hard to get my commission,
Yes, you did.
and now I'm a commissioned officer. I want a little respect, and that's what I want, a little respect. And that soldier never gave me any respect. So when he saw me, he should have said, "Uh-oh," turn around and get the hell out. But he gave me a song and dance, but he thought he could come in half-dressed. Oh, baloney. But anyway, that was fun.
You straightened him out.
Yeah. So,
Well, thank you so much for participating. It's been an honor.
well, if I said something that I shouldn't say,
No, you.
delete it.